Welcome, everybody. It'll just be another 1 to 2 minutes, and then we'll get started. We just want to make sure that we give people time to log in. Thank you. And the call is being recorded. Hey, thank you, everybody. So, thank you for attending our knowledge exchange. And I will go ahead and let Pappy and Carolyn take it away. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Welcome, folks. My name's Papy. We'll do introductions in just a moment. I'm so thrilled to be here with you all today to chat with you about our transition and orientation programming. And I'm equally excited to hear from all of you and learn about your experiences as well. The last time Carolyn and I presented, this presentation was in Halifax over the summer at the Caucus Conference, and I've kept the majority of the presentation relatively the same, but we'll be taking more intentional breaks throughout just to give you some space to ask questions and share your experiences. I personally find the more folks are able to share, the richer our experience today will be, and I'm not a natural when it comes to public speaking. You wouldn't believe how much I'm sweating right now, so the more you folks participate, the nicer it'll be for me as well. So with that, I guess we will go ahead and get started. Before we dive into our presentation, I would like to do a land acknowledgement. I know folks are tuning in from all areas of the country, but I'm coming to you from Western University in London, Ontario. Western University is located on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenape, and Attawandaron peoples on lands connected with the London Township and Sombre Treaties of 1796 and the Dish with One Spoon Covenant Wampum. With this, we respect the longstanding relationships that Indigenous nations have to this land as they are the original caretakers. We acknowledge historical and ongoing injustices that Indigenous peoples endure in Canada, and we accept responsibility as a public institution to contribute towards revealing and correcting miseducation, as well as renewing respectful relationships with Indigenous communities through our teaching, research, and community service. So, what we have on the agenda today is chatting through thriving and belonging. So, we'll start with some theory to set the tone for our conversations. We'll talk a little bit about the challenge that we faced at Western and how we kind of responded to that with the cultural shift. Um, and then dive into our evidence-informed training and programming, as well as give some opportunity for group reflection. And then we'll just end with some key tools, lessons, and takeaways that we thought really reflected our learnings at Western. So, in terms of learning objectives, we hope to share with you all how we at Western center well-being and develop a culture of care in the design of our orientation program and culture. We'll talk a little bit about Lori Schreiner's Thriving Framework and talk through how we at Western have applied it and how you too could apply it to enhance students' feelings of belonging on campus and kind of how integral that is to the success of our transition programming, and just learn a little bit more about how Western has developed and refined a holistic training curriculum for student leaders and how it can be applied to other student leadership settings as well. So, just to introduce ourselves a little bit more, like I said, my name is Pappy. I use she, her pronouns. I have at the top of my page my Clifton strengths. This is something that really hold dear at Western, particularly in our division of student experience, is Clifton Strengths. All of us do our Clifton Strengths assessment. This is something that we do with our students as well, and I'll talk a little bit more about this, but it helps both us and our student leaders really reflect on what we bring to the table in terms of strengths and how our strengths interact with the strengths of others and how it impacts the way that we think about our work and our day-to-day lives. So my strengths, my top five strengths are strategic, empathy, positivity, includer, and woo. And it really does inform the way I go about my work every day. So, my background is in marketing and communications, actually. That is the field of work that I left before coming to student affairs. I'm entering into my fourth year of working in higher education now, and I absolutely love the work that I do. So, I'm happy to continue to be here. And I'm really, really passionate about student leadership opportunities. I think it's really wonderful to see the ways in which our programming helps develop our students' leadership skills. I too was a student leader once upon a time, and I experienced great impact from this program. So I'm really passionate about kind of giving back to this community and continuing to impact it in a positive way. I'll pass it over to Carolyn to introduce herself.
Hello, welcome everyone. It's so nice to see everyone here. I'm Carolyn Temple. I'm the Director of Student Engagement at Western. My five top strengths are empathy, developer, harmony, consistency, and includer. And I do work from my heart a lot of the times. And when you're working with students, it seems to be easy to try to create an environment that is most welcoming and comfortable for them to join. I've been in student affairs for almost 26 years now. Started in housing, have been in housing for a very long time, and then came to Western a couple of years ago to work with Papy on orientation and some other student engagement things. I am very passionate about creating an equitable and inclusive learning environment for our students so that they can thrive, both our student leaders and our first year student population as well. And I help lead our orientation week, some student engagement, and some homecoming as well. Thank you, Papy.
Awesome. Thank you, Carolyn. Something that I find a little bit difficult with Zoom workshops and presentations is I can't always read the body language of the folks in the room, mainly because I know cameras are off and folks are likely multitasking. What I would love is for this presentation to be something that's useful for you all. So I'll leave the slide up for a second. Feel free to message myself or Carolyn directly if you'd like. You can feel free to pop it in the chat or even pipe up and share audibly if you'd like. If there's something specific that you're wanting us to focus on today, my hope is that if there is something that I was planning on spending less time on, maybe I can reshuffle the way we structure it so that we can focus a little bit more on those pieces. And like I said earlier, I really would encourage participation if you're able to. Feel free to either stop us, ask questions, or put things in the chat, and we'll be happy to respond. Okay, so let's dive into some theory to help us frame our conversation today. So I'd like to start with the theory of belonging and really address the importance of belonging and safety as an extension of students' basic and psychological needs. And I'd like, to start to picture Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I will say, I know that Maslow's hierarchy is rigid and lacks nuance, particularly as it relates to that of societal, cultural influences and injustices. But I bring it up in case the visual of it might be helpful to picture, because I know some folks like to have that visual, and I know it's a fairly recognizable figure. And for folks who are unfamiliar, it's essentially a hierarchical pyramid designed to highlight human needs. So I've got my purple pyramid here. So if you were thinking about this, in relation to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you can see kind of in the visualization of it as well, how immediately after those physiological needs, things like access to food and housing and security, is this idea of social connectedness, which is really integral to reaching the levels of self-actualization and fulfillment and ultimately well-being. And this too is true for our students, as we know. In order to support students in thriving academically and socially in their careers, really in all areas of their lives, it's really important to support them in creating that sense of belonging. And so, creating the sense of belonging is not just, for us about social connectedness, it's also about comfort, and safety and knowledge. So, comfort in the space, that they're in, comfort in accessing resources and feelings of safety and needing to ask for help, knowledge of the campus and buildings, and supports. And so, throughout this presentation, I'm really hoping to highlight how we at Western work to build intentional pathways that offer clear information to supports and resources and really help students in connecting with one another and with forming relationships and forming communities in spaces that feel safe and inclusive and celebratory of all aspects of their identities. And we do this in order to really create, like I said, that sense of belonging that will ultimately anchor them and support them in navigating the potentially challenging times ahead as they move through their transition. So, how do we do this? We do this, not only by helping them pick their courses or introducing them to all of the resources on campus, but by working hard to make sure they're feeling really seen and valued and celebrated, which I will be the first to admit we're not always perfect at, but we do work really, really hard every day to collect feedback and to, be better and do better. And two, we acknowledge that, without deeply intentional efforts, this feeling seen and valued and celebrated can often feel far less accessible to folks belonging to equity deserving groups. So this too is a major priority for us in our programming at Western. We have an incredibly diverse student body on our campus, and we realize that our programs and supports and opportunities have to reflect that in order to adequately contribute to this goal of creating a sense of belonging and doing so well for everyone here. So, to summarize this little section, belonging is a foundational human need and a driving force behind a lot of our leadership and transition based work at Western. Okay, so we got through our first theory. Time for theory number two, which is Laurie Schreiner's theory on thriving, in which she presents kind of a paradigm shift in higher education from measuring student success solely through grades and graduation rates to assessing student thriving. And this is the language that she uses. So she highlights that the approach to this needs to be ultimately multidimensional and impacted not just by academics, but also by social dynamics and psychological needs. So Schreiner introduces this thing called the thriving quotient, which is ultimately an assessment tool designed to identify and develop students' potential. It's across 5 key domains that she does. She draws on positive psychology and student development theory. And in doing so, she kind of outlines how thriving can be taught and nurtured, particularly in first year students, through strength-based and like optimistic educational interventions. Ultimately, my understanding of her theory is that it argues that a focus on thriving not only improves, individual student outcomes, but also supports larger institutional goals. So impacting things such as, engagement and equity, and of course, retention. So in our programming, we've taken Schreiner's theory and applied it to our assessment of our programs and the impact of them with the hopes of, addressing as many of these needs as possible so that we are empowering students to move beyond mere survival and really begin to thrive. To us, I would say a thriving student looks like someone who, is connected and engaged and feels like they have a purpose, really. And our transition efforts work with this understanding in mind and with the ultimate goal to promote, strength-based advising and self-awareness tools like Clifton Strengths, as I mentioned earlier, like really encouraging them to lean into the things that they're good at and really nurture those strengths. And learn how to best apply them in different scenarios. Also opportunities for identifying development, community connections, and values exploration, and of course, through holistic orientation programs that extend beyond that initial orientation week or welcome week. Okay, so we've talked through belonging and we've briefly explored thriving. Now onto transition research, which suggests from what we've gathered that many higher education institutions struggle to design and provide intentional and theoretically grounded, equity responsive transition frameworks to support the transition of incoming students. So without adequate transition supports, many students experience, as I'm sure all of you know, heightened anxiety and difficulties with academic integration and a reduced sense of belonging. So this is especially true, as I've mentioned, for folks belonging to equity deserving groups. And in many cases, this misalignment between student needs and institutional support can ultimately perpetuate these systemic barriers and compromise student thriving and retention. So and then I just want to like emphasize that's not to say that this misalignment is ever intentional. It is so tough to keep up with the ever-changing landscape of student needs, and that is something that we continue to struggle through. But what we do at Western is place great emphasis on transition programming and really note the importance of this pivotal period on the remainder of the student's undergraduate career and beyond. And the orientation program is a huge part of that transition support at Western. And as such, we really ground a great deal of the work that we do through orientation and how we do it by trying to keep our program as up to date as possible as it relates to the needs and interests of the students. So doing a lot of consultations with students and just making sure that everything we do and every change that we make is very much rooted in what it is that they're needing and the changes that they're wanting to see. Okay, so just to help you or help contextualize our orientation program, because there's a lot of lingo and things that feel natural to me and are really known to me. So I might use them, and I want to kind of introduce and contextualize some of this for you all. What are the key elements of Western orientation? So I've got the orientation program as our kind of first category here, and something that makes our program really unique is that there are year-long elements to it. So orientation week is just the beginning, but we work with our student leaders, but also with our faculties and our student experience staff to keep this support going. So we offer a ton of transition programming that's really catered to different student groups throughout the entirety of the year. It's truly planned and executed in collaboration with our campus partners, and we couldn't do it without them. So to name a few, I already mentioned our faculties and student experience. There's also our University Students Council that we work very closely with, Western Housing, Western International, the Office of EDI, and of course our two affiliate colleges that we have here at Western as well. So that's a bit about orientation programming, or the orientation program rather. Um, a week is one of our first touch points with students on campus in person. We have some summer transition programming, but it's really one of the first times that we have almost all of our first years on campus together. And it's a really important opportunity to connect with them and connect them to our campus. So I'll get into orientation week and what that's like a little bit later. But orientation week could not happen without our SOFs, and our SOFs are our upper year student mentors. They like to refer to themselves as students' first friends on campus. They really are high energy, passionate individuals who care deeply about supporting that transition for the first year students. So every first year student that comes to our campus is assigned two SOFs, one that's associated or affiliated rather with their faculty and one that's affiliated with their residents. And if it's an off-campus student, they would receive an off-campus SOF or be connected with an off-campus SOF. the soft support orientation programming. They plan some of the orientation programming, and ultimately they help foster connections among their assigned groups of students. And they really do commit to offering this like holistic support to incoming students for the entirety of the first year and beyond. I know that a lot of folks are still to this day best friends with their softs like 5 or 6 years later. So it really is a great opportunity for establishing strong connections. And while the students are ultimately bound by a contract, they're thrilled to be there, and many of them kind of draw on their first year experiences themselves and recognize how challenging the transition was for them, and use that as kind of motivation for them to support the incoming students. And they really do understand that impact that one good friend can have. I've got a little video here, so I know it's really difficult to kind of explain what a SOF is if you're not a part of our orientation program, but I've got a video here that I'm going to share that I think helps us. I'll just kind of let the SOFs kind of explain who they are to you all themselves.
Softing has given me so many things, but
I think when you muted yourself, Pappy, it muted the video.
Finally
Oops.
be myself. It is the
There you
most trans.
Let me put it back. Sorry, folks.
Softing has given me so many things, but I honestly think it's just taught me a lot of lessons about myself that I'll be forever grateful for.
Once I became a soph, it seemed like I was freed almost. I could finally be myself. It is the most transformative experience that anyone can have on our campus.
I think what all softs have in common is the care and the drive to show all the first years that you can be yourself in so many different ways and then have so much success at Western.
It almost feels like whenever I put on my pig wipers, it almost felt like I had this personality change in a sense where I became the most empathetic version of myself, the most zany, socially confident, say goodbye to social anxiety person I could ever become.
I've always been like involved in leadership positions, but nothing really like softening. It changed my university experience and it changed like me as a person too. Those experiences really gave me the confidence to be a better leader and gave me the confidence to be like, you know what, I can do this.
I feel like when you feel heard, you feel like you belong. You can get through all the adversity in the world as long as you have this support network and great people that are caring about you.
But that's the beauty of the role. Like you're not only a mentor there for the fun stuff or like the fun moments or like the beginning of their school life, but also you're there through thick and thin. It's really special when teachers have someone that they can rely on, someone who they formed a bond with during a week, who they've talked to, who they've opened up to, and throughout the year that person's still there. It's like goosebumps.
If you want to leave an impact on Western, if you want to be a part of an amazing community, and if you want to improve yourself for the better, gain new skills, hard skills and soft skills, softening is the number one role for you.
Okay, let me find my way back to this. Sorry. Almost there. Okay, the last thing on here that I wanted to mention is soft training. So we'll dive into this a little bit more deeply later on, but it is mandatory for our student leaders to complete our training curriculum. And it's designed by our orientation team along with, or rather in collaboration with many, many campus experts to ensure that our students are equipped with all the tools they need to properly support our incoming students, but also each other and themselves. So that's kind of a little on soft training. I'll pause for a second. Does anyone have any questions at this point or anything they want to share? Okay. So, Western's challenge, I kind of referenced this at the beginning of the presentation, but September of 2021 was a pivotal moment in time for not only the orientation program, but I would say Western as a whole. In the final days of and closely following orientation of 2021, the Western student population kind of came together and brought forward concerns relating to safety on campus. Particularly relating to gender-based and sexual violence, which, as we know, is unfortunately a really common experience and concern amongst incoming students across the board, particularly within those first 6 to 8 weeks. So, the following week, the students came together and organized a walkout as a call to action to the university for a commitment to creating a safe and welcoming culture for all students at Western. And this truly was a catalyst for change and led to conversations that really needed to be had and helped kind of open our eyes to the things that are important to our students on campus and the things that maybe we weren't taking into consideration or prioritizing in the ways that we needed to. Oops. Excuse me. So, as an institution, Western, I think, like realized that they needed to respond, and we did, and we did so by taking a multi-pronged approach. So, in an effort to create change, I would say. So, the first being, and this is a bit of a wild one, considering the sheer number of campus partners involved on this campus and to the decentralized nature of our campus. But the first approach really was taking a centralized approach to orientation, which I will admit has not been easy given the reality that our campus partners sometimes hold competing priorities and don't always want to make sacrifices at the expense of their understanding of their constituencies' needs, which is totally fair. And it's something that we continue to work through. It is a newer approach, but I think that it's been working well in areas where we've found the way to make it work. And we're continuing to have important conversations to make it as smooth a process as possible. And where it is working well, it has been well worth the effort. And another approach that we've been using in implementing this change as it relates to structure is kind of the planning and facilitation of the program. So I think we realized that we couldn't stop there in terms of like how we were going about planning and facilitating and kind of restructuring and that couldn't be it in terms of the changes that we were making. We really needed these changes to make its way down to the students in a way that felt relevant and relatable. So what we found very quickly is that it's hard to make change when we don't have buy-in. And this is where we really saw the power of students come through and their ability to come together and create a culture of change, a culture of safety and care on our campus, and ultimately be the ambassadors of this new wave of orientation. And I would say without their support and without their buy-in, we wouldn't have been able to make the changes that we intended. So as I've written here, we started with our softs, and I have up here our University Students' Council's key statement, which is that students have the power to change the world. And I know that we all believe this. I think that we all believe this, but sometimes we forget kind of the power that they hold and the importance of their voices. And the UC ultimately uses this as a guiding principle and reminder to allow students to lead and set the vision. And we kind of had to like reprioritize that in our program and remember to kind of to give the students I guess allow opportunity for students to really share their voices and share where they saw gaps in our program and changes that they thought needed to be made. An example of this is as I've been mentioning in this program, EDID, equity, diversity, inclusion, decolonization, and accessibility are top priorities for the orientation program. It's something that is at the core of every conversation that we have. We are always considering the ways in which we are creating safe and inclusive spaces and making sure that the programming really will resonate with, or that we have programming that will resonate with all of our students and that will ultimately make it so that our students feel like they have a place on this campus, like they're being represented and that they belong. But this year we had a conversation with our students where they ultimately highlighted, this did not come through. This does not come through to us. We do not feel the impacts of this, and to us it feels like you don't care about ADI. And that was really, really shocking for us to hear, because we know on our end how much emphasis we put on this and how important it is to us that everything we do is as inclusive and accessible as possible. And so I think that that was a really important conversation for us to have, and led to some changes in the program that really resonated with the SOFs. We implemented a new, what we call ambassador program, where all of our leadership teams, so our SOFs are ultimately run by leadership teams, have representatives that either sit on a committee that speaks to EDID, or sits on an accessibility committee, and they are either the EDID ambassadors or the accessibility ambassadors. And it's been a very powerful program, and a good way for us to have a better understanding of how we really need to be incorporating these changes into our programming and what the true impacts of them are, because sometimes we're making changes all the way up here and it's not being felt down here, and that's important for us to know. So this is just one example of a change we've made based on the voices of our students. And so noting their importance, the SOF's importance and the students' importance in all of this, and in order to make sure they have all the tools they need to, be that change that they want to see on our campus, we've really invested heavily in an intensive training curriculum. So, soft training. Well, I'll go into this in depth in just a moment, but as I mentioned earlier, it's led by our campus experts and it covers a bunch of different topics. Our soft training happens in 2 weeks. So our leadership teams come in for the very first week and have training that's covering all of these topics, but at a higher level, noting that these students are returning SOFs, and really catering to developing their leadership skills, and also kind of supporting them in aspects such as project management and team management, which are kind of under their responsibilities. And then in the following week, we have what we call N week, which is when our general SOFs come in. So our LST training, we have about 85 SOFs present. And then for our general LST training, we have, I think, a little under 1,100 SOFs that we're training. And that one is a little hectic, but covers all of these topics as well, and just at a more foundational level. Interesting about our training is we kind of restructured the way that our training works, I would say, over the last few years. And things had been going really, really well. We were really happy with the feedback that we were receiving from our SOFs. But what we learned is that there were some moments that that maybe our training was missing the mark. And so we've gone through now recently and have done a quality assessment on our training, and we're looking into how we can even continue to further improve training from what it was this past year. So what I'll show you in just a minute is the schedule that we have or that we had for training last year, but I imagine that will continue to evolve over the course of this academic year, and we'll have an even stronger version of this to kind of present to our students in late August. So our learning objective themes are leading a team, so how to lead a team, and we have a ton of learning objectives under that. Navigating challenges in a leadership role. So this would cover things like problem solving, critical thinking, ethical decision making, things like that. Fostering a sense of belonging, and this is where we kind of talk them through some transition theory and what are the changes that first years are facing, and how can we really create a safe and inclusive and welcoming space for them. We have training on equity, diversity, inclusion, decolonization, and accessibility. Not all together, it's split up into a few different sessions. Holistic wellness, so that would cover anything from like gender-based and sexual violence prevention, mental health support, suicide alertness, and a ton of other things that really speak to ensuring their, social and academic and transitional supports are all present. I think in holistic wellness, we also have like academic success under there as well. And then we've got our orientation operations and university policies and procedures. And this speaks more to what are the policies and procedures that you have to follow within this role. And if something were to happen during our orientation week, how are you expected to react and behave? So I've got a little screenshot here, and I apologize. It's a little small, but I think because we're on computers, you can probably zoom in. If not, feel free to send me an email, and I'd be happy to just send you a little PDF of this as well so that you have access to it if you'd like to reference it. So this is a schedule of what is our LST training. So as you can see, we have 5 days with them. We cover a ton of different topics. I won't go through them all, but like I mentioned, things ranging from, Clifton Strengths to Safe Talk. So that's our suicide alertness training, to things like Boundaries and Repair, which is our training surrounding gender-based and sexual violence prevention. We've got disclosure training, emergency protocols, lots of topics that we're covering throughout this week. Most of the way in which this unfolds is by sharing in each session. Our campus experts, who are the ones who design and deliver the majority of these sessions, talk the softs through whatever their respective topic is. And so they share a little bit of general information about it that they think would be important to know, maybe some theoretical background, and then they'll talk them through how they can apply the knowledge that they're learning to the role of a soft. So why do you need to know this? Like, what is the importance of this in your role, and how does this apply to you? I think that's the part that's like really important for our softs, and they're looking for even more of that, of understanding, the practical need, the practical takeaway. What should my 3 takeaways be from this training, if you will? And so they do that for the first 4 days. The first day is typically a little bit lighter in terms of content. But they go through and do all of the training, and the very last day is what we call case-based learning day. And so for most of the sessions that they do, there is some sort of case that they work through together. Or several cases kind of in each section, but there will be a case-based learning session dedicated to that. And this is the opportunity for them to really put their learned skills into practice. So there will be examples included in there that'll be based on things that have happened in the past during orientation week, things that we want them to be prepared for. They get the opportunity with their teams to really work through all of the things that they've learned and ask their questions. So if there's a scenario that's resembling, something that could happen during orientation week, they can think through, okay, here are the things that I've learned. Here's how I would go about this. Here's how I'd apply my knowledge. Is this correct? And we would have orientation experts as well as subject matter experts in the room to kind of talk them through that. So that is our LST training. And then we have our end week training, which looks a little bit intensive, but it's actually very similar to our LST training, but just at a more foundational level. The reason that we have so many different sessions happening concurrently is because we can't have all of these sessions happening at once for everyone. So sometimes we have to do some constituencies in the morning, flip and do other sessions with them in the afternoon, and vice versa for the other constituencies who weren't involved in the first morning session. So as you can see, lots of similar topics being covered. Like I mentioned, more of a foundational kind of approach to this knowledge, because we'll have softs who will be, recently graduated from their first year, or recently moving on from their first year, so that'll be their first year softing. And we'll also have softs that'll have soft several years in the past. Typically they can soft up to 3 or 4 years by the time they graduate from their undergraduate degree. So we really need to make sure that all softs have the same tools, if you will, in their toolkits, and that they're all kind of have a basic understanding of these concepts. So this is kind of what this looks like. As you can see, we also have our case-based learning day on Thursday for them. It works a little bit differently for the general softs. They do it within their individual teams, and it's a really, really busy day. We kind of take over 3 buildings. There are 5 sessions going on in each building, and at any given time throughout that day, each session is happening concurrently in 3 buildings. So the softs will rotate through the sessions, and and get through all of the sessions for case-based learning. So for our softs, these are typically, we'll have one that's a week strategy, so that'll kind of be like policies and procedures. We'll have one that's GBSV related. We'll have one that's EDID related, one that's mental health, and then they'll have a small first aid session that they do, which is not first aid certification, but we have folks from the community come in and just do some basic first aid stuff with them. So that is on the training schedule. I see something in the chat. Let me just take a look here. Okay, perfect. Any questions about that? Okay. So I think that I will pass it over to Carolyn now if you want to talk through care hubs.
Sure. Sorry, I'm just opening up my screen. So based on sort of our conversations after 2021, safety was one of the things we were trying to prioritize. And sort of three things that came out of that were care hubs, our mobile operations trailer, and our emergency operations logistic committee. So I chair our emergency logistics committee, and it sort of is a collaboration of all departments across campus that look at safety. So anything from facilities to sort of our security that we hire for our events. So that committee makes sure that, you know, there's enough security at each event. We have enough snacks and water and all of that kind of stuff. And then our mobile operations trailer is sort of, it's an actual trailer that has all of our emergency sort of screens and cameras across campus that we are able to look at and just sort of monitor the comings and goings of the students throughout the evening. So it opens at 6 every evening of orientation week, and it's staffed by 3 senior members and our emergency management person from our special constables department. So the goal of this is to sort of have a place where students can find lost and found belongings, and to get a member from our community who can help in an emergency or just answer a question. So everyone is connected by a radio, and the mobile operations trailer has a radio that we are able to connect with if there is an emergency on campus. Thankfully, the last couple of years, they've been there just as support and not needed. But it is a great way for our students to see that, you know, senior leaders are here, and usually the last ones on campus that night, because once we've sort of said that, you know, campus is quiet, we're the last ones to go home. And then our last thing, but I think one of our most important things that we have implemented are our care hubs. So across campus, there's 3 care hubs. They're an actual tent, and they have staff and faculty volunteers and some of our softs. And it is a place for students to stop and either grab a snack, grab a water, or do some quiet, more reflective programming. So our softs will have like a bracelet making, and it's just a way for students to stop if, you know, the evening is getting too much, or they just want a quieter place to hang out, but still sort of be involved in our programming. And then our softs are able to check in, ask questions. There's also a mental health counselor at each care hub as well. So sometimes, you know, there might not be a crisis, but there might be someone that just needs to talk to someone. So we've made it very clear that mental health counselors will need to be on site for those. And just needed if students, you know, need a little bit of extra support that the care softs and the faculty and staff member aren't able to offer. So those are the 3 things that we've implemented since 2001.
Awesome. Thank you, Carolyn.
No worries.
I saw a question in the chat, and the question is, do you provide any incentive for training attendance given that it requires a full week of their time? Great question. The answer is no, it is a requirement of their role. So in order for softs to be able to be on the ground during orientation week and support the students in September, they must go through training. It's absolutely like mandatory. We have what we call a request to miss process. So if there are extenuating circumstances, they can submit a request to miss training, and they would that would be approved or denied based on the circumstances. And if it is approved, they would be required to complete makeup training on the very first day of move-ins rather than supporting move-ins before they get their wristbands to be on the grounds during orientation week. It's something that we've worked really hard actually to make clear to students. I think maybe 5 years ago, there was a lot more flexibility in terms of whether or not softs would be given their wristbands if they had not completed training. But I think since then we've made sure to make very clear, both in our role descriptions and in our interview process, we've got kind of a two-step recruitment system where they do a written application first, and that's shortlisted, and then we do interviews. So every step of the way, and when they sign their contracts for their roles, it is emphasized that these are the dates. If you are not available, you cannot be a soft. And I think it's something that took a few years to be understood and recognized. But I think we're kind of on the other end of it now, and softs just know that it is a part of the role, and it is an expectation to be there. I think that we are really lucky that we have a ton of interest for these roles. I think last year, so we hire about a little under 1,100 softs, and that is including our affiliate softs as well for the affiliate colleges. But last year we had around 5,700 applications for these roles. So it's a very competitive program. Folks are really eager to be a part of it. And I think because of that, they were willing to kind of move forward with us and accept this new way of training. Okay. I think the one thing that, or a couple new initiatives that we introduced this year to orientation week, again based on student feedback. One that was really successful was our sensory friendly or sensory aware programming and room. So we have with our programming, we make sure to have a diverse range of high to low intensity programming. And just to make sure that we have something for everyone at all times. So, or at any given time during orientation week, there's something like, I don't know, 6 to 10 different programming happening, or different events happening on campus. And they really do range in terms of what they are and the intensity levels and whatnot. And then this year we also implemented what we call our sensory friendly room, and that's something that we have close to our main venue. So our main stage or main venue is kind of where we have our more high intensity programming. So things like concerts and DJs and those sorts of things that are a little bit louder, a little bit more overstimulating. And the sensory friendly room came to be because of feedback we received from students that it would be nice to have, some place to kind of decompress. And so we implemented that this year. It was really, really successful. It was used every single night of orientation week. We had both our student leaders and our first year students taking time in there to just decompress. Maybe do a little craft. Maybe they were, playing with we had some fidget toys and sensory toys in the room. Maybe it was just having some really like quiet conversation with one another, but was really, really successful. As always, we really try and incorporate community engagement initiatives. We have our orientation service programming where we have partners from the community, so nonprofits come in and facilitate programming for us, and that's really to help introduce our students to the broader Western community, and that's kind of at the end of the week. And then implemented some new events centered around cultural diversity, just to make sure that we are being responsive to those student asks. And the other thing that we implemented this year for the first time as kind of a pilot was equity deserving group orientation. So we had our Office of EDI last year had implemented or had hosted a Black student orientation / welcome where your students were able to attend as well. But they partnered with us this year, and we did the Black student orientation again. We also did a 2S LGBTQ plus orientation, and we did a Muslim student orientation, and are continuing to do some other events with them throughout the year. And we're hoping to bring this back as well next year. We got a lot of positive feedback about that as well. Okay, so what have we learned? I just put some key little takeaways and I think in developing this, we chatted with a lot of folks that we work with to be like, what feels like the main takeaways of what we've learned over the last few years and trying to kind of create this culture shift and make these positive changes in our program. And the first thing that I have here is that redesigning orientation requires a unified approach to a culture shift. It is not a quick fix. And so what we try to do and what we continue to do is try and centralize this process, which, like I mentioned, is has been difficult and hasn't been without its challenges. But I think so many beautiful collaborations and partnerships have come out of this new approach to orientation, and I think our program is far stronger for it. And when we are all on the same page and able to kind of provide the same types of communication to our student leaders, and they are on board and they buy in, this really impacts the culture on campus. And we've seen it, at least with the student leaders that we interact with throughout the year, and hope that that impact is felt across campus as well. The second thing that we have is that students are really eager collaborators and ambassadors when empowered and trusted. And so we've created so many opportunities for these students to really take the lead and feel accountable for these programs. And where we have and where we've set them up for success, they really have shown up and made us proud and have been incredible ambassadors for the program. There have been so many moments where we've been on the grounds and things have been happening that we are raising an eyebrow at and are getting ready to intervene. But before we can do that, a student leader has already stepped in and addressed the situation and the issue. And that is really, really rewarding for us to see and has been, I think, integral to this culture shift that we're working towards here at Western in our orientation and transition programming. And the third thing is that equity and care must be practiced intentionally and daily and not just exemplified or taught once. And this is something that, like I mentioned, we really prioritize here at Western, but are learning that we need to be doing differently in order to have a true impact. And so it's something that we're working on every single day and making sure to incorporate in all of the things that we're doing, whether that's training for the SOFs or program planning or working with partners, whatever it is, just making sure that that is at the core of all of the work that we do. And this is kind of how we've gotten to where we've gotten and how we'll continue to move forward. We have a ton of goals. We're really not where we want to be, end game, but we're working towards that end goal. And we'll continue to push forward in order to, or like move forward rather, to push the boundaries on our program and continue to improve what we're offering to students and the impact that we have on our students. So I have some key takeaways outlined. I recognize that the folks in this room today are likely coming to this conversation under different circumstances, and some folks may have larger or smaller teams than others, and folks are likely working with different budgetary constraints. And noting that, I wanted to make sure that our three key takeaways that we left you with today were ones that could be implemented and have the potential to be impactful regardless of your circumstances. And so the first one that I have is cross-campus collaboration. So really truly getting as many people in a room together as you possibly can, I think will do your program such good. We implemented two new committees over the last couple of years. One of them is called our Orientation Programming Committee. That committee, we've got representation from our Office of EDI, Western International. We've got our folks from our affiliates on there. We have folks from housing, we have faculty representation, folks from student experience, lots of representation and folks in the room that can kind of brainstorm and talk through some of the things that we're doing throughout orientation or within the orientation program and just kind of work together to make the program stronger. And so we are even now kind of thinking through different ways and different committees that we can put together to create more opportunities for folks to be in a room together and have these candid conversations with one another. I find them really powerful, and I think that's when we're really able to affect change. And the second one that I have is intentional evaluation. So lots of consulting. We do a lot of focus groups with our SOFs and other kind of partners across campus, lots of different assessment tools, and we are continuing to add more and more to our program, as well as evaluations after our orientation week and after different events that we have affiliated with orientation. I think collecting as much data as possible has really helped us, helped inform the decisions that we make, and has made a world of a difference. And we started off small. I think that when we first started doing this, we realized we weren't collecting any information at all from anyone. We were just observing, and what was anecdotal we would use to kind of help inform our decisions, and realize that that was not setting us up for success to be as impactful as possible. And so as to not waste time and kind of devote time and energy to initiatives that maybe we're not going to land, or we're missing the mark. We felt the need to, do things like have these focus groups, send out these surveys, do these things to get a better understanding of what those needs are across campus. And that's not just for our students, it's also for our staff. And then the last thing we have here is application-based training. So the case-based learning day for our softs is so wildly impactful, and we hear it from them every year. They're like, we want every session to be case-based learning, but obviously we need to teach them the content first before they can have the opportunity to apply it. But application-based training has been an absolute game changer for us here, and we've noticed a difference in the ways in which our softs are prepared to handle various situations ever since implementing this. So I'd say these are the three key takeaways. Obviously, we talked about a lot more today. And if folks have questions, we'd be happy to kind of talk through them with you, or you're welcome to book time with us, and we'd be happy to talk more about the specifics of this. But I think that when we boil it down to like, what are the three things that we did that really made the biggest impact on our program, I would say these three would be them. So I think that's it for us. I had a parting ponder, but we don't have a ton of time to work through that. So I've got a question slide up. I know that folks will likely have to leave soon, but Carolyn and I will stay here in case you have any questions or want to chat about anything. So please let us know, or pop your questions in the chat. We'd be happy to talk through them with you. Thanks, everyone.
Hey everyone. Since it looks like there's no questions, I just wanted to jump in and take a quick second to thank so much the presentation. This was some great information. I know who I will be reaching out to shortly to learn more. And just a reminder, as Sultan posted, that it is available on the drive. So if you want to revisit anything, feel free to do that. And thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Not a question, but just wanted to say thank you so much. Love the presentation, and I really love the video that you did of your students. That was fantastic. It was so energetic, and it really kind of gave me a great picture of what these experiences look like, and just like really well done on that. So thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thank you so much for saying that. We actually just had that video made, so we were so excited to share it. We also felt like it really captured their energy well, so thank you.
Very cool. Thanks.
Is your information in the presentation?
I just popped my email into the chat,
Okay.
so feel free to email me there.
Yeah.
The size of our incoming class is around, I think, 6,700 students. My pleasure.
Yeah, it's phenomenal what you're doing. It's similar, like not similar, but kind of um along the same lines. I don't know if you've heard of Chelsea Coursey at Thompson Rivers University.
No.
She has wellness ambassadors.
Okay, cool.
So we have a wellness center, and the students come in for like um peer mentoring. And then we have our ambassadors, and again, we do like a week long, it's a different capacity, but we do a week long training with like communication skills, suicide alert, equity diversity training, like a lot of different things. And then the students, it's all student-led and student-based programming. And she
Yeah,
also does
wow.
like consent cafes about consent. And they just went to India as well. And it's really phenomenal. Her name is Chelsea Corsi, and she's at Thompson Rivers University. She's been doing this for many years. Like she developed this program. It has a lot of the same ideology and pedagogy, but like at a different scale because obviously Thompson Rivers University is a different institute. Like it's the size and the demographics and the geo location is different. But it's very interesting because I worked and supported that programming as well for a few years, and it's like it's cool to see the parallels.
Yeah, that's really awesome. I mean, if you have her contact information, I'd love to pick her brain and just see what she's doing. I think that we haven't run into a ton of or we haven't been had the opportunity to interact with a lot of other folks who are doing this type of training and work. So a lot of a lot of what we've come up with is just by trial and error, but I'd love to see um what she's developed and maybe be able to implement some of her sessions or I don't know, incorporate some of the things that she does that works well into our program.
So I've gone ahead and given you her email in our private
Perfect.
chat and her
Thank you.
name. And then you can also just say because she's like a close like mentor and friend of mine, a colleague. So then she'll you can say that I connected you. And she's also like a part of caucus, and at one point she was on one of the communities of practice. Yeah.
I really appreciate that. Thank you. I'll
No
be in
worries.
touch.
Yeah.
Sure.
And she's just very she has a very trauma-informed like equity lens. So what else is really interesting is she at that one point we implemented and piloted elder and wellness. So then we would have because they're siloed like Indigenous center, right? Or we have a
Mhm.
house five or house I think it's called House Five. It was the gathering place for Indigenous students, but then it's like it's siloed. So then we try to implement so in the wellness center to have elder and wellness to infuse like indigenous pedagogy and ways of thinking and like allow to try to blend the wellness center with having the elder available in the wellness center and then doing indigenous focused outreach and teaching. So it was like
Cool.
community based learning. So there's a lot of different things like that she might be able to explain. And even consent
Great.
education, does this consent cafe for years. And then now they took it even to India to do consent training. Um, so there's a lot of different layers that you could possibly glean.
Yeah, that sounds really impactful.
Yeah,
Thank you. I'm looking forward
no
to it.
Thank
problem.
you.
Yeah, just different aspects. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay, so on that, I'm going to end this call and the recording. I should have stopped the recording.
That's okay.